Augmentt is a multi-tenant Microsoft 365 security and management platform built specifically for MSPs. They're based in Ottawa, Canada, and in November 2025, they raised an $18 million Series A, led by Canberra Partners. Canberra is a growth equity firm that backs high-velocity B2B software companies, and Augmentt have publicly said they're going to use this capital to expand their GTM operations, accelerate the product roadmap, and double down on their partnership ecosystem. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what I would do if I was going to help them grow their company. Now, I'm Halen Yules, the founder of ScaleMate. We have helped over 50 B2B SaaS companies build custom GTM engines that 10x's their sales team performance. We've worked with companies like Plarion, an AI cloud security startup who raised a $10 million seed round. The founder Keith sold his last business to Trend Micro for $70 million. In the first 30 days of working with us, they booked 11 meetings, one closed to $20,000 in ARR. They then bundled their offering into a managed service for their customers and have now opened up multiple six figures in qualified sales opportunities. Let's do the same for Augmentt, and let's get into the video. So first, let's establish some facts so we all know what assumptions I'm working from to put this GTM plan together. So I'm just going to use SalesNav to find out the number of salespeople that they currently have, the number of SDRs, and the number of RevOps, SalesOps, and marketing people. Often startups have marketing or growth people as like quasi RevOps / marketing person. Here, just looked at the number of salespeople / account executives. Looks like they have 9 people with a VP of sales, maybe 8. Now we're going to see the number of SDRs or BDRs that they currently have. Looks like they have 3 people, including a team lead. And finally, we're going to see the number of RevOps, SalesOps, or marketing or growth people. And they have a VP of marketing and 2, junior marketing roles at the moment. Now, in the startup world, they're obviously not a publicly traded company. So Augmentt have self-reported, apparently, $3.4 million in ARR in October of 2024. They also reported around a 13% year-on-year growth rate. So assuming those things are true, by the time they raised their Series A, they would have been at around 3.8 million in ARR. Now, we all know when you raise money, the external pressure begins for generating returns. So let's assume quite a conservative year-on-year growth target for the first year that they had raised the funds. Let's assume a target of 50%. This means that their target would have been $5.7 million for a 50% year-on-year growth rate by October of this year. So in just a few months, they should be nearing that $5.7 million mark. Now let's assume again, targets have slightly increased. We can say 55% year-on-year growth rate. So their new target from a year from now would be $8.5 million. Now that is a gap of 2.8 million, roughly 2.85 million. Now for this video, obviously I'm not going to go through every single channel and close the entire 2.8 million gap. So let's assume just from LinkedIn, we're going to close 1.5 million of that gap. Now, my first real sales role where I started generating significant revenue for a business was actually for an MSSP back in Australia. Shout out to the missing link. So this one is near and dear to my heart. The next step that I took, I had a look at Augmentt's website and they have some case studies. Now, some of these businesses, computers.com, Net, Surit, and all covered. Some of them have the low thousands of employees and some of them have a couple hundred. Some of them just have double digits. So let's assume average contract about 150 employees for one of their customers. Now, again, a massive assumption. They don't publish all this stuff. $25 per user per month, I feel is quite fair. So a blended average contract value for this video, let's assume $40,000. Okay, now we have the numbers. We are looking to close a $1.5 million revenue gap that these guys have in the next 12 months. Their average contract value is about $40,000. And I'm going to assume that their close rate is about 20%. Now, this is what a LinkedIn funnel actually looks like. So we can start to see the numbers, the number of accounts that you need, the number of messages that you need to send. Basically what this means, there's 2 different flows that I would run. One is a connection workflow, send a connection request, the person accepts, sends a message, a follow-up, etc. The second is an in-mail workflow. An in-mail workflow, you do not need to wait for the person on the other end to accept a connection request. You can just send a message if they have an open profile. An open profile is essentially the setting on LinkedIn that allows businesses to know that you're open for a new role, but it doesn't show your current employer. A little trick, people forget to turn that setting off. About 20 to 30% of profiles, depending on who you're targeting, have an open profile, which means the volume per sender account increases by about 20 to 30% depending on your ICP. Good little GTM hack. So the total ICP leads that would need to go through this connection workflow throughout the whole year would be 47,158. And in the in-mail workflow, 20,210. Now the acceptance rate I have assumed at 25%. Pretty reasonable. I think a benchmark of 30% is quite good. Again, just depends on your market, how active they are on LinkedIn and how you source the data. That's what influences that metric. A reply rate, 1 in 4 people reply. That's actually quite conservative. We often get 40% reply rates depending on the campaign, depending on the customer. As we work down, 25% positive reply rate. So So 1 in 4 people say something positive and look to engage, and a meeting rate of 0.7%. Again, that's pretty good. That's when the message is quite dialed and pretty good. We've gone through some experimentation, all this sort of stuff. They've probably got a bunch of emails, a bunch of LinkedIn messages, a bunch of marketing campaigns that we can leverage to craft the best possible message. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. Obviously, we're going to add our flavor, but 0.7% is very, very achievable. Just on the connection workflow, that would be 83 meetings booked. Obviously, some people don't show up, rescheduling happens, people get busy. So 15% of those people will drop off. A total of 71 meetings held just from that flow. On the in-mail side, this one's easier to calculate, I think, but we've used the same assumptions for reply rate and positive reply rate and meeting rate. And what pops out the other side is 120 meetings booked from that workflow. Over the year, we're looking to book 224 meetings. 15% of those people do not show up. That means 190 meetings will go ahead. At a 20% close rate, that would be 38 new customers to close that $1.5 million revenue gap that we're chasing. This means, conservatively, I would probably want to add a couple more LinkedIn accounts, but we're looking at 11 profiles to be sending constantly at virtually full capacity throughout the year. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I really wanted to dig into what the potential ICP of these guys was, and I came up with a couple of ideas. So they're targeting, first of all, from a company standpoint, Microsoft-specific MSPs, and that also goes into MSSPs because they do have security offerings. Now, this seems to be a management system designed for MSPs who are then serving their customers. So it's a management layer on top to be able to manage multi-tenants, multiple different customers, different Microsoft suites, cloud environments. There's security stuff in there for shadow IT and all this sort of stuff. There's an Intune management platform, very specific to the Microsoft suite. Now, the people that we would be going after, this is where it gets interesting. I would assume at the smaller end of town, they're going directly to the CEO, the owner, the MD, whatever that job title is, probably CEO, founder. At the bigger end of town, mid-market, 50 plus employees, the chief operating officer is often the end decision maker. There might be a CTO in there who makes decisions on the technology that's being used. But the interesting angle is these companies are sales driven. MSPs, MSSPs, they've usually got quite a good portion of their headcount dedicated to sales, and whatever can make them different than the rest of the MSPs, the MSSPs out there, because it's very, very competitive. Given that it's a services business, anyone can start a services business quite quickly with low capital investment. There's no physical products, there's no software build, etc. Anything that can make them different and more efficient is a huge benefit to that company. So you are selling an offering almost to their customers to say, hey, we are going to make you more effective, more efficient, easier to manage, less customer support, less service delivery managers, etc., etc. So you could technically sell, I think there might be an angle to go to the VP of sales, the director of sales, the person who runs customer operations, right? You could expand the ICP beyond the traditional decision maker. Yes, they might be an entry point, but you can work your way up to the COO, the CTO, whoever is making that final decision. So I would want to go and obviously talk to them before doing any campaigns, but we could segment out a few different persona type experiments or ICP cohorts, depending on the function and the title of who we're actually speaking to. Now we have to think about targeting. The first question I ask myself is, what audiences can we farm and go after that would be very, very interesting for Augmentt? Well, MSPs are an established business. There's a lot of software companies that already service that industry. The one that springs to mind is Kaseya. Now, I went onto their LinkedIn, and Kaseya have 202,000 followers. Another one that we actually used at the missing link was ConnectWise. They've got a huge footprint of businesses that are already using ConnectWise, already using Kaseya. So I would be thinking about targeting these 200,000 people who already follow Kaseya. Now, they could be happy existing customers of Kaseya. They could also be unhappy customers who are paying too much money for Kaseya. They could be churned customers. They could be people who've moved businesses who used Kaseya at their last company and now have moved on and would like to make a change because they didn't like the software. The point is there are a bunch of people in that 200,000 odd who are ready to have a conversation with Augmentt. The same thing is true with ConnectWise, and this strategy is limited by your imagination. You can think of all these different angles to try and get someone's attention, to take a sales meeting, and then obviously work them down the funnel. Now, some other ideas that I had. Microsoft Azure has a LinkedIn company page. They have 1 million followers. I'm sure there's a bunch of MSPs and MSSPs, resellers, etc., that are following them or using them and offering Microsoft value-added services to their customers. Then there's also the niche providers out there. There's a bunch of service providers that use technologies outside of the Microsoft suite because Microsoft is just one of their service offerings or managed service offerings. Each individual product set that you offer, one of them, for example, is in the shadow IT space. Netscope virtually invented the word shadow IT. Using Netscope's followers, you could target MSSPs with a very, very specific message around that. That would be a land and expand approach. Again, approaching these guys with something additional they can offer their customers or in a more efficient way would be very, very beneficial here. Now, these data sets are virtually unlimited because the tech ecosystem for MSPs and resellers and MSSPs is basically unlimited. They get approached by these guys every day. This is an under-tapped data source that I would strongly urge them to leverage. Now, if we were going to do an engagement, I would first obviously define who the ICP is and the separate cohorts within it. So we've already spoken about some. One would be MSPs, another would be MSSPs, maybe consultancies. We've got some industry tags there ranked by size of company, and I'm sure they've got target account lists that they really, really want to get into. That's the first thing. Second is now that we have their competition, the existing footprint or the existing tech ecosystem all mapped out according to MSPs and those industries that I mentioned or sub-industries, I would then go and get all of that data, or at least a subset of that data to begin. I would map that back onto their TAM. So we literally have CEO of MSP follows Kaseya, follows ConnectWise, right? Now they could follow more than one. We would obviously choose the best one, the best angle that we think is right and rank that accordingly. But the final product would be a list of prospects who have this intent signal mapped. Once we have the first few campaigns from those separate intent signals mapped out, you would need to cross-reference that with their CRM. Given they have raised a Series A, they've got a whole bunch of customers and case studies, there's definitely some gaps that we would be filling. We do not want to touch any existing pipeline or existing customers, so we would need to do a mapping exercise back to their CRM. Now that's relatively quick to get a couple of campaigns going. We would launch those, get some immediate results and build trust with this customer. Now the way our contracts work, that trust phase is gated behind usually a rescoping exercise. So they are commercially protected against poor results, against something that didn't work, to allow for that experimentation phase. Now, typically, this is the best strategy that I've seen on LinkedIn, just quietly, but we should get immediate results from that. Now we expand the footprint out. We should have their TAM map with intent signals and start to ICP score every single person so we can prioritize our outreach on LinkedIn. Now, there are a number of factors that go into this. Some of it could be target accounts they really want to get into. Some of it could be the depth and richness of these intent signals. Some are obviously better than others, but that scoring system is what allows us to prioritize our outreach over time. Now, here's where the magic happens and where strong GTM expertise is incredibly valuable. We've set up a quick and dirty campaign that's going to deliver immediate results. In the background, we're collecting a whole bunch more data, mapping it to the existing CRM, getting any warm leads and prioritizing accordingly. Fantastic. Now you've got 11, 12 accounts that are sending messages constantly every day. That generates a bunch of replies. Now the typical model, and given the number of SDRs versus number of sales reps that they have, they're already quite efficient. There's 8 or 9 sales reps. There's 3 SDRs plus a manager. I would assume that they're managing inboxes, replies, scheduling. We have a replies handling agent that takes the brunt work off of those people. Essentially, those people become managers of the agent to tweak replies. Now, the beauty of it, it's filtered back in to their CRM, obviously, but also a custom engine that learns over time. This is the real leverage of AI. The beginning of this project and in the background, once we've launched that quick campaign, I would want to ingest all of the responses that you've got in your current systems, cherry pick the best 100. It's a good sort of number to go off of. Feed that into the system. Every reply that now comes in from our campaigns uses that corpus of knowledge as the initial response. Then your SDRs, instead of writing replies each time, they are approving and editing. They get all the information sent to them and they see the response, they see the thread, and they approve or edit the response, and that filters back into the system. Now, the North Star metric is revenue closed. Now, that obviously takes some time for new revenue, but every meeting book, every positive reply, the system sees this and learns over time with the goal of having automatic replies for 40, 50% of your cold outbound. That is the real game changer, feeding everything into a system. It constantly learns, and this is where you see the 10x efficiency gains. Now, this is just one example, but this would last you a long time. The MSP world is full of tech providers who already have an audience that we can leverage. We can go after them for a very, very long time. Other examples, these guys attend events. They put on their own events all the time. They have partners literally listed on their website. If you wanted to do a hyper-targeted campaign to key accounts, that would be very, very doable by scraping their followers, getting their audience, leveraging their partners that are already on their website to do that. The possibilities are basically endless. This is what a future GTM motion looks like, run by 3 people, but getting the output of 20 or 30. If you would like to get in touch and become part of the ScaleMate family, book a call with our team.